Good evening, Illini fans. It is the 200 level. Mike Carpenter in the basement studio late on a Friday evening. And what to say? Would it be hyperbolic to say that was the biggest one of the year? And I think there's a few reasons why we could say that. One, I need to start with that environment at the State Farm Center. Was not planning on going. Tickets became available to me late in the game. So I was planning on a second half podcast, and that would have been fine. But this crowd tonight, and my sister texted me, maybe it was the fact it was unofficial for the students, but this crowd tonight was phenomenal. And bear in mind, this is during a game where Purdue, I thought, looked just better for probably 35 minutes. I mean, that was a tenuous game as far as how you felt Illinois' chances were in it. And that was Braden Smith. That was Trey Kaufman-Renn. Every time it felt like you maybe had some footing in this game, they'd make a massive play or they would take the momentum away. But this crowd kept coming back, and that also speaks to this Illini team that kind of kept coming back. They hung in there despite not being able to match Smith and Kaufman-Renn for much of that game. But I got to start with the environment because I was noting to my friend Kyle that I went to the game with that as good as things have been under Brad Underwood, there's been this weird habit to almost get bigger wins on the road than at home. And this team in particular didn't really have that marquee home win. Yes, we could say Wisconsin. That was back in December where I don't know if we knew how good they were, so that felt at the time more like, yeah, it's a really good win, but not maybe the one that you're going to remember the most. We hadn't had that one super special night at State Farm Center. And last year, I'm trying to think what that would have been for last year's team. I thought the Michigan State game without Terrence Shannon was a pretty awesome atmosphere there last year. But some of their bigger wins were on the road. You go to 2 years ago, again, a Michigan State home win, and Michigan double overtime. That was awesome. So, every team has at least had one or two of those moments. This team had not, I felt like, had one of those moments, really. UCLA came close, though the way that ended, I think, left people walking out of there like, huh. But this was thrilling, not just because it was a big win against a good team, or a very good team in the case of Purdue. It was a big win against a team you had not beaten in 4 years. January 2021 was the last time that you beat Purdue. They've beaten you 5 times in a row, and a couple of those weren't particularly well. Actually, let's go back on that. I mean, like even the game at Purdue last year, where you were trailing by a sizable margin, you made a crazy comeback at the end of it. But all the while in those 5 games, it always felt like they just kept you at arm's length, and it was frustrating because you were really good. They were just probably a tick better. And it sucks to acknowledge that sometimes. It sucks when they have generational talents like a Zach Edey or now a Braden Smith who really is ridiculous. I mean, that guy is the best point guard maybe in the country. I don't know if that's hyperbolic either. But to get that win in front of this crowd against this Purdue team, yeah, no Zach Edey, but they're still pretty good. And to do so a mere 13 days after a game that I controversially noted as rock bottom on a podcast title, I got to give all the flowers to this team. This could have went a very, very different direction. It could have. And when Iowa made a 9-0 run in that first half, I thought that maybe this was going to go in a very different direction. But credit to this team. They took care of business in the second half against Iowa. Put them away. Michigan, whoa. And then tonight, a 13-1 run to end the game. You beat Purdue by 8. The score is not going to reflect how a lot of that game felt. It felt like, man, if we're going to win this, again, as I said to my friend, it feels like we're kind of going to have to pull this out of our butt because it's just everything that they're doing well tonight, we're having a hard time countering. And it was an uphill battle, and yet they just plugged away. They plugged away, and then eventually the barrage of points late, and most importantly, I thought, the stops. And this is where a lot of the talk on this program, but really on Twitter, on other podcasts, on any Illini message board, has been centered around Brad Underwood because of the sort of mercurial up and downs of this team. And, of course, it starts at the top. I think we would all agree with that. But the debate has been, to what degree does this rest on Brad Underwood? And there have been moments this year where I've gotten very frustrated and thinking, I think he's pretty culpable for a lot of what's going on. I tell you what, for all the micro things that I might take issue with Brad Underwood with, the fact is it's March 7th. You're 13 days removed from a 43-point loss against Duke. And you've won 3 games in a row, 2 of them against basically top 15 caliber teams. I mean, a Michigan and a Purdue, I would imagine, are going to be 4 seeds, if not 5 seeds at worst in the NCAA tournament. And they've earned that. You probably played your way up to the 6th line. I would love that. I think that's a great spot for this Illini team where you just get that first win and give yourselves a shot against a 3 seed. But this is not a conversation we would have been having. I didn't envision it. I thought we're going to limp in. We're going to get the Iowa win, but we're going to limp in as like a 8, 9, maybe 10, depending on how things shook out, if we get a win in the Big Ten tournament or not. We've turned that on its head. And Brad Underwood has a lot to do with that. This thing could have went south. Will Riley could have said, I'm going to the league, man. Like, I'm not going to bust my ass for a team that just lost by 43 points at Madison Square Garden. KJ could have said the same thing, and I know he was not super effective tonight for much of the game. The dude made the shot that mattered the most. He made it. I mean, that step-back 3, just like the Missouri game, when you needed that the most, the dude went and got it. Well, guess what? They're still invested. They're still engaged. They're still playing hard. And then there's a few other guys we can talk about too, and I want to give note before we hit up the sponsors here. And chat thread, hit me up with whatever you got tonight. I'll get to all of it. Benham Rickhouse, which I'll pull up the stats here, and I know he hit a couple of big threes. But it's not as if he had a 20-point barrage. It's not that. It's not even as if he was like a dynamite defender, but I'll give him this. From our vantage point, our seats are behind what would be Illinois' basket in the first and Purdue's basket in the second. I thought he played his ass off against Kaufman-Renn in that second half. He put up some resistance where I thought Tommy was struggling badly. I mean, it was a disappointing night for Tommy. I know he had a few shots, but just defensively, a sieve. And you do need Morez back. You really do, because that pick and roll was getting Illinois all night long, frustrating as that was. But Ben did about as good of a job as you could have asked from him. He stopped the bleeding on just enough possessions to give you that window of opportunity. I got to give him props. I'm going to get everybody else, and you might find it weird, of course, that I'm giving Ben Humrickhouse props. Well, I did give KJ and Will that, but that really stuck out to me. And I was looking at that group of 5 guys on the court at the end of the game, and Ben Humrickhouse playing the 5, okay, Tre White, Kylan, KJ, and Will. And I thought, I like that group right there. I really like that group. That's the best 5 right now. And this is something, before we hit the sponsors, I think is worth noting. I think Brad Underwood made the right call, putting Ben in for Tommy. I know there was the foul trouble. That's probably what started it. But he rode Ben late in that game because it was working better. So there are moments of frustration, and there are moments of perceived stubbornness from Brad Underwood. I cannot say that tonight. I really cannot. I thought that he read the game fairly well. I do take issue with as many threes that were being shot, but eventually they made them. So 7 for 15 in the second half will do it. I think, though, that they played the game in front of them for the most part. Had they lost, I would have been frustrated. I don't know how much I would have put on Brad Underwood. I would have said, well, I was expecting to come here and say, Braden Smith, Kaufman-Renn, they did what superstars do. I mean, of course, Kaufman-Renn turns into one, but that speaks a little bit to the value in having a program that keeps guys around and builds on something. But no, that's not the story tonight. The story tonight is, even when things were tenuous, a 13-1 run at the end of the game led you to an 8-point win at home. That's another quad 1 victory that's going to help you when it comes to Selection Sunday. And more than that, I mean, well, that's the most important thing. But in addition to that, you got the Big Ten tournament coming up. And you will have to play Thursday because of a couple of losses. I mean, yeah, the USC and the Nebraska loss and losing by as much as he did against Rutgers, I mean, those loom large. You probably should have found your way to Friday. I mean, this team, we see it. I mean, there are dudes on this team. Nonetheless, I don't know. I think Illinois can get a couple wins in Indy. I think they could do that. And it comes down to who they would play. And the first game would, I think, at the moment be between Ohio State or Northwestern, either of which I feel okay about, preferably Northwestern. And then at the moment, I think Michigan in the second round or your second game. And I'm thinking, okay, but I mean, just think about this. We're having conversations that are fun in March when towards the end of February, it looked like this team was dead to rights. So that's the story. Yes, beating Purdue is massive in a vacuum, but it's the fact that you did this after feeling so low. And I wasn't alone. I mean, the Iowa game, when I look at the podcast numbers after an Iowa win, that didn't convince anybody. That was great. And okay, we punched our ticket. Nothing to scoff at. That's important, right? You punched your ticket. But the Michigan game got people thinking, oh, okay. Tonight got them invested again. And that's important as you go into March. All right. YouTube feed, I see you guys. We'll hit you all up in just a bit here, but I got to remind you, the sponsors of the 200 level include Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, Steak, Seafood, and Spirits. Great place for a pre- or post-game meal or a date night with your partner, whatever it may be. Hamilton Walkers is great for formal and informal occasions. My personal favorite restaurant in town. We really appreciate them partnering up with us here on the 200 level. Also got to thank State Farm agent Brian Hansen online at brianismyguy.com for life, auto, home, business renters, you name it. Brian is my guy. And he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. OM Builders LLC online at ombuildersllc.com. Got to thank Luke and his expert staff, craftsmen that are just really good at a variety of home improvement projects. You can check out a gallery of their work online and get a free quote while you're at it at ombuildersllc.com. Also got to thank Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing. And get this, you can, if you call them today, 217-841-4728. With the purchase of a new HVAC system, you can get a free water heater. It's a pretty damn good deal. So give them a call today at 217-841-4728. Get that new HVAC system today. They will install it for you, and you'll get a free hot water heater. That's a tough deal to beat. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing. Champagne Showers Podcast Network, appreciate them and appreciate you, listeners, viewers, however you consume the podcast. My friends, and I do mean that because they're Illini fans, and had a great conversation with them earlier this week. The boardroom tweeted out rock bottom with me again, but I know it's in jest, and I appreciate them for the conversation we had earlier this week. You know, it is remarkable. I mean, it's a crazy narrative that we find ourselves here. Sorry, just going to fix this mic stand. That we find ourselves here. I've already said this 2 or 3 times, 13 days after the Duke game, but I mean, it is a little bit surreal. And why, collecting my thoughts, I thought, well, should I come on now? Well, of course, because I'm not going to go to sleep. Who am I kidding? I'm not going to go to sleep after that game until like midnight. So, okay, come down, do the podcast, hit up the YouTube feed. And, you know, in trying to contextualize this season, I think what they're doing right now is they are separating themselves from 2 years ago, because that season ended in such disappointing fashion. You lost your last 3 games of the year. It would have been at Ohio State, Penn State in the Big Ten tournament, and then in the tournament itself against Arkansas. And that was a season that you were ready to wash your hands of. And this team has somehow played their way back into, no, I don't want to wash my hands of it yet. I want them to play as many games going forward. Now, you're in that part of the year where it could be 2 games. Or it could be like last year where they played 7 games after the regular season. A few things of note. I will give the boardroom credit for this. They collected this information. But Brad Underwood and Matt Painter with 81 wins in the last 5 years in Big Ten play. The next closest is 72. So good catch by them. Pretty remarkable. Yes, Purdue has probably taken advantage of Zach Edey and then Braden Smith becoming a superstar point guard with a little bit more, I mean, I guess we'd say consistency. And, of course, the higher peak last year making it to the championship game with a team that was worthy of making it. I mean, they were the second best team all year long. So that should not go without mention. I mean, to be in a position where you are objectively one of the top two programs in the Big Ten in a competitive college basketball landscape, I mean, that points to a level of consistency. This is the second worst year that Brad Underwood has had since he turned this thing around. And they finished 12-8 in the Big Ten. And there will be the 6th seed, presumably, in the Big Ten tournament. That's the second worst season that he's had in the last 6. So I know that was in jest because of the conversation we had, and I clarified why I called that podcast rock bottom, and I think it applied to that moment. Think how you were feeling. I mean, that was a rough moment where you do, even just as a fan that never put the blood, sweat, and tears into playing on the court. I mean, those guys have a lot more skin in the game than we do. But these winters, we so look forward to Illini basketball. And when they're good, life is that much better. Sounds silly, but that's sports. That's just the nature of it. So when it hit that point, it was like, damn it. Like, I'm checked out. Out of self-defense, whatever you want to call it, you just put it on the proverbial cup. I don't want to get hurt again, so I'm not going to get invested in this team anymore. And then, of course, I'm going to watch the Iowa game. How am I not going to watch the Iowa game? Well, I watch it. Oh, okay, pretty good. The Michigan game, we're doing a recording session because I in a way, maybe was trying to, I wanted something else to do as the game was on the TV. So we're playing, we're recording, but I'm still I'm looking over. Oh, damn, okay, another 3 made. Wow, we're looking pretty good. Wow, we're up 20. And then they're pulling me back in. They're pulling me back in. Now, today, as Purdue is leading by, I think as much as 10? I don't know if it got past 10 or not. There were moments where I thought, man, this isn't angering me so much because this team was still in a bit of a show-me phase. Like the Michigan win was clearly impressive. But in terms of getting everybody super jazzed again, it would have taken tonight. I think we would agree with that. And then they got it. I mentioned earlier Ben Henrichhaus. He was the first one I kind of shouted out, which might sound silly, but I think it was worth mentioning. Let's talk about some of the other guys that had just monster games. Kylan Boswell's been playing great ball. 15 points on 7 of 9 from the free throw line, so that was big. And funny thing is, 7 for 9 for him is an off-shooting night at the free throw line, but he made them when they counted. 4 boards, 5 assists, 0 turnovers. Steady hand. Good stuff from him. 29 minutes, so he got some breaths on the sideline. Will Riley is a star. Enjoy him for the last few games that you got him. 22 points on 7 of 14 from the field. As Brad Underwood said in the postgame, a few missed shots. But here's the key for me. Will Riley went 6 for 6 from the line. This is someone who has struggled at the line this year. I think maybe it feels, I would have to look at this, but it feels like his free throw percentage is under 70. For a guy that's such a pure shooter, that kind of surprises you, but went 6 for 6 tonight. Just massive. Tommy got 14. It's funny. He got 14 and 6, and yet it feels like he had a bad game. We'd have to check the plus-minus on that because he wasn't in there for the late push. I think defensively he was trying, but it wasn't a good matchup, and it just kind of got away from him. Tre White, monster game. 20 points, 9 boards. Starting to play like that mid-December Tre White where we felt really good about his game. He's starting to play at a level where you're like, I'd like him back next year. Kasparas, 10 points, 3 of 10 shooting, 7 assists, 3 boards, 2 turnovers. As they noted on the radio postgame, Illinois with a total of 8 turnovers. Is that right? Yeah, 4 in each half. I mean, that'll play. Single-digit turnovers against this Purdue team will win you a lot of games. But the thing is, on the other side, Purdue got theirs from their big dudes. So Trey Kaufman-Renn with 29 points, 13 of 23. That's pretty efficient. But at the same time, 13 of 23, considering it was all around the rim, you did eventually get a little bit of resistance on that. I mean, it took a while, and it was by the skin of your teeth, but you did get enough resistance to finally change the course of the game. Braden Smith is an absolute stud. He somehow missed that last rebound for a triple-double. He was hanging there at 9 boards for so much of the game, 18 points, 12 assists, 3 turnovers, played all 40 minutes. Here's the deal. Does he bother me a little bit? Yeah. But then I was thinking about it. There was a play earlier where I forget what the play was exactly, but he's pretty demonstrative on the court. He doesn't mind playing the role of heel or villain. I have not seen against Illinois Braden Smith do anything dirty. The dude's a gamer. I mean, he is a freaking awesome basketball player. And I noticed as I was watching the game, I can't hate that. Now, granted, he missed his last few shots. And Braden Smith ended the game 8 of 19 shooting. So, I mean, 50%, you'll take that. But it felt like 8 and 19. I don't know if anyone on YouTube would be able to look this up or not, but it felt like he missed his last few when it mattered the most. Meanwhile, you were hitting yours. Let's see here. Trey, not a factor. Trey Gibbs Lawhorn, that is. Jake Davis, not a factor. It was a 6-man rotation. And you had a whole week, basically, 6 days off coming up. And I knew that they were going to throw them out there for extended minutes, and they did. But, you know, man, I can look at the stat sheet and talk all about that, but there's also the intangible quality of winning this game. Just frickin' balls to win that game the way that they did, the way it went for so long. To be under the 4-minute media timeout and trailing by 1, I believe it was 73-72 with like 3:36 to go. And then you go on this run. I mean, to be there in that stadium and feel the groundswell as all this was going on. You went up 4, and then, well, let me think here. How did it go? You were up 4, and then there was the 5-point swing, if I recall, where KJ should have gotten, he threw it from an inbounds play under the basket off a Purdue guy and missed the layup. It was the Scottie Pippen special, which Scottie did it in some playoff game, I feel like, in the 90s. But he missed the layup. And then Braden Smith hit a 3. And that 5-point swing right there, right then and there, I felt like, damn it. That's the one. And not in some sort of cynical way. It just felt like all game long, it was so tenuous to even be hanging in it with the way that Braden Smith was playing, the way Trey Kaufman-Renn was getting whatever he wanted. And that swing right there felt so consequential with, 5.5, 5 to go. And then you hang, you don't let them extend the lead, you're only down 1, and yet it just felt like, I don't know. I was trying to keep my hopes up, but it felt like, damn, we're going to get a few more shots made, I think. I don't think this is going to be like the Michigan State game or a complete collapse, but how are we going to get stops? And they did. And there are 2 plays of the game I think we could look at. One would be KJ's step-back 3, of course, the dagger. But whether it came before or after that, and I mean, the end of the game was a bit of a blur. Will Riley getting the steal off of Trey Kaufman-Renn. Man, when I say the place exploded, I mean, as close to literally exploded as you could say. It's so cool to be in there when you have 16,000 plus, or in this, I've got 15 and a half now. 15 and a half, and just that, like, it's almost like a pre-roar. You see the play, and if you think about it, there's just that little quarter second as everyone observes what just happened, be it the KJ step-back 3 or the Will Riley steal, and then it just erupts. I mean, really cool. This is a kind of game and a kind of environment that I wrote a freaking book about. And I'm not just doing this for a cheap plug, but I mean, really, this is the kind of thing that's so easy to tap into because it's a primal emotion. The reason we go to these games is for the chance of attending a game like tonight and being in a crowd like the one that was there tonight. And I know for the ones that were watching on TV, they probably sensed it. I would imagine the announcers even made note of it because that place was up for grabs late in that game. And what factor did that ultimately have in the outcome? I'm not sure, but you know what? That crowd could have slipped and fallen into, oh my God, here we go again. And it was close. I mean, it was close when Purdue was up 8, 9, 10 maybe, max in the second half. I'm thinking, is this going to get away from us? It didn't. And then, I noticed too, and this is the sign that I think of a really good home environment. I think Purdue had the ball up 4. We had whittled it down from 9 or 10. There's like 6, 7 minutes to go in the game. And you see the Orange Crush. They're really starting to get loud again. And then people are standing up because they realize this is important. You can't let Purdue extend this lead again. It's go time. You're down 4, get another stop. Give yourselves a chance. So, like, that kind of recognition is the kind of stuff that you see at a really good home environment. I'm sure Mackey Arena is special. Everybody says it's better, and it very well might be. I don't want us to sleep on the fact that State Farm Center is a really awesome home environment. And I know that the wins or the marquee wins or the really feel-good wins haven't come at the clip that we wanted to, despite all the success Brad Underwood's had. I mean, he's remarkably good on the road, and he's just okay at home when you consider how good the teams have been. Kind of confounding, right? It's really been the success on the road that has led you to a Big Ten regular season title and giving you good seeds to go get 2 Big Ten tournament titles. I mean, that's been a far stronger narrative for him. But this one was really cathartic because of that lack of marquee home wins this year. And the other thing I think it does too, as I mentioned briefly in the opening segment, I think it does away with the idea that this year was going to be underwhelming. And, they could lose the Big Ten tournament game and lose the first game of the NCAA tournament. And yeah, that would, of course, bring underwhelming back into play. But we knew going into the season that last regular season game against Purdue was going to be important, whether it was for a Big Ten title or whether it was just 2 good teams going head-to-head. If we were going to beat Purdue, it had to be now. I mean, bear in mind, Purdue is going to bring back Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman-Renn, and Fletcher Lawyer next year. They aren't going anywhere. That's a credit to Matt Painter for having that continuity in an era where continuity isn't really a big thing. You kind of had to get this one against Purdue because I don't know what this offseason holds for Illinois, and it might be very fruitful, but it would have been difficult to go into next year thinking, oh, yeah, we'll get Purdue this year. Says who? They're bringing their 3 best players back. And they had some dudes, and this is what worried me on top of everything. Some of their random dudes were hitting threes. And it's like, oh, my God, if Roosevelt Colvin's son is going to hit a 3 tonight. Did he? Did Colvin hit a 3? Nah, he didn't. Who was one that did hit a couple? Cox hit 1. Oh, that's it, Harris. He went 2 for 2 from 3. 8 points in 13 minutes. And you saw that and thought, man, that you can't withstand that probably if their big 3 are getting theirs. And they did, and it didn't matter. 13-1 run to end the game. That's just big, guys. That's big time. YouTube feed, let me get to you. All right. This is from David, Exercising Demons. It felt that way, David. This is why, the fist pumps and the high fives on the way out of the stadium, and even just the hooting and hollering that was going on from fans as they left the State Farm Center. Yeah, I mean, that was certainly an exorcism in there. It felt good. From Jonathan, Kasparas Jakucionis is a killer. Thank God he's reemerging, and Riley is a beast. Funny thing is, Jonathan, I thought Kasparas struggled. I mean, that 5-point swing, as I mentioned, was I worried going to be the turning point of the game, or the one that was like the death knell, essentially. And it wasn't. And that step-back 3 was just freaking beastly. From K. Andrew, to get our 20th win of the regular season after we were sinking at 17-11, man, it just feels good. K. Andrew, I agree. And I know you got a lot of criticisms of Brad Underwood, and many of those I agree with. But I do think credit does go to him in a macro sense, being able to make, an adjustment defensively, which, yeah, the defense left you wanting tonight. I wonder if it's just because of dynamite games from Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn or somewhere in between. But that adjustment, but also just the more intangible quality of keeping this locker room and this team invested to this degree to get these 3 wins. From Ian, KJ loves to wait until the final minutes to make his jumpers. No complaints tonight. And more from Ian. Best coaching I've seen from Brad this season. Some good plays after timeouts, some good late small defensive adjustments, and continued success off of seemingly simple baseline out-of-bounds plays. Yeah, I think offensively, Ian, they're doing pretty well on those under the basket out of bounds plays. Purdue got one that was frustrating because that was after a timeout. Brad called the timeout late as well. It felt like an extra timeout that he often wouldn't call. Call this a hunch. It just felt like he was more active tonight. It's almost like he got the Jones to be a coachy coach again, just like really kind of walk around more, interact with the officials more, get in his players' faces. There was a cool moment. I say cool, but to me it looked cool. Kylan and Brad, they weren't jawing at each other. But Kylan was pumped up, and Brad was pumped up. Kylan was making a point emphatically to him, and Brad was like, yeah, almost looked like he nodded, and then Kylan walked away. But I don't know. It just seems like if we're to do bad lip reading or armchair psychiatry here, or psychology, it does seem like there is a more active nature to what he's doing on the sideline right now. I think that there was an urgency that probably took too long to creep in. I think that he allowed, and I would still criticize him for this because I do think while the injuries and illness, of course, had a role on this team's struggles for that stretch, I felt like he let that take too much of the blame and was not introspective enough. But here's the deal. Better late than never, and he did make changes, and they are having a positive impact on this team. This is from Michael. So glad to finally beat those guys. I hate the way Purdue plays the game. Ugly. I'd say that, Michael. I mean, they scored 80 points, or was it 81? What was it? I'll make sure I get that right. 80. So you wouldn't think that was an ugly game. They scored 42 and then 38 first half to second half, and yet you're right. It's just a bruising kind of thing. A little bit less so for them because it's not a 7'4" Zach Edey. I mean, Trey Kaufman-Renn is not a great defender, it doesn't feel like. But Purdue's making this work okay. And they're adding their 7'4" behemoth was injured this year, so he's going to be back next year. Hopefully he sucks because I can't deal with another towering beast for Purdue. It's just a little too much for me to take. From Hassan, we need Tre White at this level the rest of the way. If you get that, Hassan, then you could find your way to the Sweet 16. I do think that. Matchup dependent, of course. It is a crapshoot. We all know that. But Trey is playing great. I mean, guys, just a month ago, right? 4 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago, he played no minutes against Michigan State. Apparently he was healthy. He was just did not play. You didn't lose him. And that's credit to Trey. I mean, he could have said, screw all this. I kind of want him back. He'll be a senior next year. I think continuity is important. I think he brings of course he brings something. Consistency, that I can't say for certain, but are you going to risk going out and getting someone at the expense of keeping Tre White? I think you try to keep him. I think you do. I think you keep Trey. I think you keep Kylan, of course. Tommy, Merez. And Dame Sarr, that name keeps getting thrown around like it's a foregone conclusion. Well, I'll take Dame Sarr. Shoot, okay? And then go out and get a proven commodity at the 2 from a Power 4 program. Spend your money on a proven dude. Terrence Shannon style. I mean, Terrence Shannon was, of course, a big name. It was you or Michigan going for him. But you have the resources to pull in a kind of guy like that. Whether or not he has the all-time season Terrence does, you don't need that. You just need a proven commodity at the 2, I think. And if you say next year we're starting with Kylan, proven dude at the 2 from a Power 4 school, Tre White at 3, Tommy Merez at the 4 and 5, and then you get Dame Sarr off the bench. You fill in some pieces off the bench. I mean, the other thing to consider is if you get Benham Rickhouse off the bench. And I would not say no to that. As rough as this year's been, he played 21 minutes tonight. I think that was on the high end for what Brad Underwood would have liked to done tonight. I think he would have played Ben for 15. But Tommy was ineffective defensively. So he adjusted. Said, screw it, I'm putting Ben up there. And it actually worked out okay. So I'm just kind of, we don't need to get into next year's roster construction yet. I'm just saying I was really concerned, I know controversially, after the Wisconsin game thinking, I don't even know who's going to come back next year. I mean, again, Trey was not back really yet. He was playing, but he wasn't effective yet. And here we are, and I'm just like, well, I'll keep that guy. I'll keep that guy. I'll keep this guy and that guy. This is from Ken. Hey, Ken Toner. ILL, good times at SFC are back, baby. It was a special evening, Kenton, at the State Farm tonight. From Ian. Illinois, one of only 10 teams to be top 20 offense and top 40 defense on KenPom. That's been the recipe for national champions the last 25 years. Just throwing that out there. Who knows? Ian, I'll take a second weekend trip. Cool thing is, though, if I recall, the year that Illinois was a 1 seed and lost to Loyola, it was a 6 seed UCLA that made the title game or the Final Four, and they lost to Gonzaga, I think. You know, it's all matchup dependent. You just hope you don't get in the Duke or the Auburn bracket because, no, you aren't. You are not getting out of those brackets. But I'm just happy that we can have conversations again of, well, if you get this bracket or if you get this matchup, shoot your shot. And, you know, we'll see with a guy like Will and a guy like KJ. Yes, they're going to league, but we've already seen they aren't giving up on the season. And I know giving up, it's not like they go out there and they just throw games. It's not to that degree, but giving up in that they don't need to be playing this hard and trying to, like, it's I don't know if we'd even see it, but I think we would feel it. Like if they had snuck by Iowa but lost the last 2 games, it probably would have had something to do with the fact that Will and KJ know we got bigger fish to fry. We are not going to go 110%. We'll just go 95 and just make sure we stay healthy, don't get injured. That would be a natural human reaction when things were going bad and then they have their livelihoods at stake. Well, we're already seeing that's not the case, and now it's almost flipping where I think the mindset for them would easily be, this is our only chance to play in the NCAA tournament. This is it. So let's go do it. And I'll be excited to see how they perform under those lights. KJ, as frustrating as he's been the last 6 weeks, or really post-arm injury, you know, the dude still has a lot of big plays this year. Yeah, he's had some bad ones, but he's had a lot of big plays. He could do that in March. And now you got Will Riley playing at a superstar level. It really just comes down to, as mentioned earlier from Asan, if Tre White is doing what he did the last 2 games, if Kylan continues to play at this level, and if you get Merez back to just make life easier for Tommy and then also get some garbage buckets down low because Merez is so good around the rim, yes, shoot your shot. If you get a 6 seed, I don't know who the 3 would be, but, you know, what would the 3 seeds be here? If I'm looking at KenPom, okay, Gonzaga, they wouldn't put you with Michigan State or Wisconsin. Iowa State again, you know. Maryland, they wouldn't put you with them. They probably wouldn't get a 3 anyway. Texas Tech, though, they're playing their way into a 2. I don't know. What separates you from a 3? Duke and Auburn are on their own thing. And you could say that Houston is around there, but I don't know. What have you got in Florida's bracket? I know they won in Alabama. They are a supremely talented offensive team, but just it's just cool to think, okay, let's see how this shakes out. Like now, Selection Sunday is going to be really intriguing. And the cool thing is, as a 6 seed and having made the Elite 8 last year, as a fan, it will be kind of fun to take the approach of, okay, first round matchup, this 11 seed. Okay, well, you should win that game. Okay, great. 3 seed. Okay, let's spring the upset. What the hell? Where last year was like, please, for the love of God, don't lose to BYU. And then when Duquesne won, please, for the love of God, don't lose to Duquesne. You got to get this done. Well, they did. I think it would be kind of fun to play the role, which Brad Underwood has not done this yet. It would have been his first good year, or I should say his 3rd season, had that tournament happened in 2020. That team would not have been all that dissimilar from this team. That team was winning after Io came back from his injury, a couple weeks out, right, or week and a half, comes back, they win at Penn State, they win a few games down the stretch. They lost at Ohio State, costing them a chance at the Big Ten title, but then they end the season with a win against Iowa at home. They're feeling really good at that moment going in the Big Ten tournament before they got called off. I think that for Brad Underwood, the next year they were front runners. They were 1 seed. That didn't go so well for them. The year after that, they were, frankly, tired. I don't think any of us were too surprised the way they lost to Houston, but they did win a Big Ten title. But I don't think anyone was really feeling it going that tournament. 2023, of course no one was feeling it. And then last year, It was, okay, you're kind of front runners again as a 3 seed. Just don't screw it up. Just make the second weekend. This would be kind of fun to be the aggressor, to be the hunter. And that's what this team is playing themselves in a position of being. I think that's fun. I mean, to me, that's kind of a new role that we haven't been able to play as fans, and I think that might actually serve them well. Okay, I might talk myself into winning a few games in the tournament. I don't know. We got to see the matchups. I could see a 3 and be like, oh, screw this. I could see an 11 that scares me to death and think, oh, boy, I don't like this matchup. Or Illinois could hit 35% from 3 in these games and be as dangerous as anyone not named Duke or Auburn. I mean, they could. But that's why we watch, right? I mean, 13 days ago, we are not having any of these conversations because it would have been ridiculous to do. We were licking our wounds and thinking, where is this thing going? Some were just thinking in the course of the season. I was worried going the off season thinking the list for Brad Underwood is getting longer and longer of things that he needs to fix. I still think there are things that he needs to address. I hope he does. He's been good at adapting. But this team's not dead yet. That's a credit to them and a credit to this coach for keeping them afloat and making them pretty intriguing. I mean, they'll be bandied about in Indy as, oh, well, look at Illinois' side of the bracket. They avoid Michigan State up top, which is, I think, in all likelihood, until a possible championship matchup. So that means they'd be on the side of Michigan and Maryland. Maryland's tough. But yeah, there's a path that might open up for them. So it's all fun. I mean, listen, I love this time of year. I love the fact that Brad Underwood has them coming back here. I have levied criticisms towards him, but I never would go so far as to say, get rid of him. At the lowest of the low, the most that I would have said is, yeah, I'm questioning his coaching ability, his in-game coaching ability, and where does that leave you? And then on reflection, I thought, okay, it's a big offseason. He's had really good off seasons before. He needs to get a third assistant that can help him do that stuff because there's too many things that he does well that I don't really want to move on from that. I mean, that's the absolute lowest I got as far as feeling about Brad Underwood. And I thought I carefully worded that, but maybe not always, because people would assume, well, you hate him. I don't hate him. Again, 280-page book here is not from the vitriol that I have towards Brad Underwood. It's the fact that he made us relevant again, that I would even think that there'd be an audience for something like that. And that I wanted to kind of reflect on all these years. Well, we are potentially looking at a March that could be memorable, and it doesn't need to be a Final Four, because I don't think that would be a realistic expectation for this team. But line it up, go out there, and maybe get a couple wins. And then all of a sudden you're thinking, wow, that was a crazy-ass year. But that team had a little bit of success in March too. And now maybe you're continuing at that point to get that albatross off of Brad Underwood's back. Now, we are having a different conversation. I will not happily, very bummed out, have that conversation if they lose in the first round in ugly fashion. But you're going to be in, you're going to get a decent seed, and then you hope the draw is good. All right, a few more here in the YouTube feed. From Ryan, if there's one huge lesson I want Brad to learn, it's not to buck the trend of these rock star freshmen, but to get a vet to be your featured guy. This year's best teams are old, minus Duke. That's fair, Ryan, and I think that if Dame Sarr, this phenom from Europe, is in fact a done deal, okay, great. He can be Will Riley. But I do think it behooves them to go out and get an old, proven vet who's just a dude. And they got the money, they got the resources to do that. From Stephen Colbert, figuring things out and getting hot at the right time, hopefully. After many games where we kept it close against a good team but couldn't finish, it was nice to see us pull it out. If we play well with the right matchup, maybe we'll make a run to the weekend. If not, oh well. Not bad for a down year, says Stephen. I agree with that, Stephen. Well put. And from Ryan, if they can shoot 35% from deep in the tournament, watch the hell out, especially if they're not challenged by size. From Jake, make it to the 5 line if we win the Big Ten tourney. Yeah. You know, it's funny, Jake. I don't know if I want to make it to the 5 line. I mean, but I do want to win the Big Ten tournament. It's so funny. I love the Big Ten tournament. I know some don't maybe look at it as fondly because there's this stigma that by winning it, you are decreasing your chances of an NCAA tournament run. And while that's been the case in a few years, it certainly wasn't the last year for Illinois. And I like that weekend. I love waking up on Selection Sunday with my team in the Big Ten tournament final. It could happen. So I'm going to enjoy next weekend. I talked about all the seeding possibilities, but don't mistake me. I'm excited to watch the Big Ten tournament. Very. And it'll be Thursday evening, probably about like 5:30. If they do, in fact, get the 6th seed, we'll know Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, and we go from there. But, yeah. Hey, I got to give props to Brad Underwood, props to this team. Not at all what I thought was going to happen. And they won 3 in a row, and in each of them, somewhat impressive fashion for what they were. I mean, today it was man, tough sledding for 35 minutes. What a ballsy finish from this team. I mean, just pure guts to get that done. From Dan, they are playing together better, if that makes sense, peaking at the right time. Dan, there seems to be a true cohesion out there. I would agree with that. And then from Ian, fingers crossed for that 6th seed, stay off the 4-5 and the 8-9. I agree, Ian, because here's the deal. If you're going to make any surprise run, if you're a 4-5, I mean, Sweet 16 would be great. But there's something, I've seen so many 4-5s with Illinois. They never seem to go well. They never seem to. So let's go weird. The 3 seed worked great last year. I loved when we got the 3 seed because I don't know if my life, unless it was like a Ken Norman team when I don't even remember it, getting a 3 seed. So they got that. I was like, this is uncharted territory. I kind of like that. And then a 6 seed, I've seen that a couple times. I want to say that they were a 6 seed with Lon Kruger's first team, and then they lost to Chattanooga, 14 seed in the second round. That was rough. 6 seed not with Bill Self and Bruce Weber. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. We haven't really seen that. They probably would have been a 6, maybe 7 at worst in Io's sophomore year had that tournament happened. Let's see. The scenes if we ran into Bruce Pearl in 1. Yeah. If that happens, Stephen Colbert, as you say, wouldn't happen, but a man can dream. No one wants a piece of Auburn or Duke. I mean, yeah, sure, take your shot, but those two, I think, are in a league of their own. Ken Pom and those analytics would agree that they're up here. Houston, Kelvin Sampson, same thing. They aren't too far behind, and I wouldn't want really to deal with that, but I think a 6 line feels good, all things considered, and it's impressive that this team has played themselves back into that position. So, guys, it's a good night. What can I tell you? I mean, Illinois gets a huge win against a team that we hadn't beaten since early January of 2021, when there weren't even fans in the stadium. And I know for those Orange Crush kids that have been there for 4 years because they recognize the seniors at halftime, they never seen that. And that's a big moment, and it's worth celebrating. I hope the team has a great night tonight. I hope the fans do. I'll be up for another hour probably. Just a monster win in front of a monster home crowd. It's those nights that you live for as an Illini fan. It's just that's the good stuff. That really is. One more here from Ryan. Tennessee, Florida, Bama feel like the most vulnerable top seeds. I'd agree with that, yeah. All SEC. But, Ryan, I think that Tennessee probably down to a 2 now. Hard to say. Where is Tennessee kind of finding themselves? Now they could play themselves into a 1. Tennessee and Florida look to be in Alabama for that 1 seed, but Alabama with that loss to Florida might have fallen down to a 2. Well, I think I'm going to sleep well tonight. Even if I get 6 hours, it's going to be wake up and a little slap happy after tonight. But before I get out of here, I got to remind you that the best way to support our podcast, of course, is to support our sponsors. So that's Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign for steak, seafood, and spirits. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728. Also got to thank Owen Builders, LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com. And finally, State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. So later next week, I should say, Tuesday, Wednesday, we'll do a podcast to get ready for the Big Ten tournament. Thursday, oh, crap. Parent-teacher conferences, but I'm not too booked. So when I'm not conferencing, I will be watching the game. But that probably means no Garage Pod. So I hope they make it to Friday so we can do a Garage Pod because I need to get those in. Saturday, if they make it to Saturday, I'm flying to Austin to visit a buddy for a few nights, and it would be from 1:20 to 4:20. So I would probably get to Austin and be able to watch most of it in Austin because that's the later game that day. And then I would love to watch with my friend who is a Spartans fan, would love to see Michigan State, Illinois, Big Ten tournament title. Why the hell not? That'd be fun. But it's a good night, guys. I mean, that's a big-time win. Absolutely massive. And I'm going to soak in that, and you should too, for the next few days. And then we get ready for the Big Ten tournament. All right, everybody, I hope you have a good night and a good rest of your weekend. It's fun to watch Big Ten basketball now that, okay, you got a big win. You can enjoy the Saturday and Sunday with the remaining games left in this regular season. It's been a crazy one by any measure. But the key is how you finish. And this team so far is answering the call after what was a really excruciating 5-6 week period and a really bad 3-game stretch. I said after the Duke loss, hey, I mean, every great comeback story has a rock bottom, right? If they were to come back from this, wouldn't that be something? Well, we shall see. But the fact that that idea could even reasonably pop in our head of this team 13 days ago, dead to rights, doing what they're doing now and winning, hey, a gritty win as they did tonight, speaks volumes of that locker room. It didn't have to be like that. It could have been like 2 years ago. It's not. And I think that's worth noting and definitely encouraging, not just for the way this team ends, but to me, for all the concerns I had entering a crucial offseason, and still will be, at least that list is growing shorter, and it feels like maybe there's an opportunity for continuity that didn't feel like it was there 2 weeks ago. All right, everybody. Sweet dreams. Not that you need any help with that. Illinois beats Purdue 88-80 in the Big Ten regular season finale. It is the 200 level. Good times, everybody. Thank you all. I appreciate your support. If you could do me a favor and like this video on the way out, that helps us get discovered by other people. And you all have a good rest of your evening and a good weekend, okay? See you, everybody.